On February 24th, 2005, 38-year-old Natalie Morgan was out for a movie in Portland, Oregon, when she was involved in a minor low-speed accident. What happened next would change her life forever. When the emergency services arrived, they discovered her traumatized, but vomiting profusely, which puzzled them beyond their senses because this wasn't normal. She was soon rushed to the hospital, where doctors proclaimed her dead. But what happened next would reveal the most unusual and disturbing story that could possibly happen to a 38-year-old lovely housewife. On the morning of February 24th, 2005, Natalie, her husband Ethan Morgan, and their two small children awoke to begin their day. Ethan had the day off, which provided him the opportunity to play with and care for the children, enabling Natalie to concentrate on her goals without any concerns. Natalie had planned to go to the cinema with her sister to watch a movie and spend some quality time together. But as the morning progressed, her errands and duties piled up, making her run late. Natalie immediately got ready, raced out the front door, and jumped in her car, driving to the movie. At 1:53 p.m., while driving, Natalie called a buddy for a casual chat. What began as a normal conversation took a dark and unexpected turn in the middle of their conversation, signaling the start of a terrible and unexplained chain of events that would change everything. She called her friend Sophie and said, "I feel like crap. I just feel horrible." As she was talking about that with her friend, she then passed out. Natalie was driving much more slowly than usual in her Volvo SUV as she headed down Hawthorne Boulevard toward the movie theater. Usually, it was only a 10-minute drive from her house to the theater, but as she got closer, something seemed off. Her driving became erratic, and she started veering all over the road. Suddenly, her car crashed into another car, but she kept veering until her car slowly slowed down and finally stopped. This was completely out of character for Natalie. As a medical professional drove by, she saw Natalie's car parked awkwardly on the road. She quickly pulled over and ran to check on the driver. When she got to the car, she saw Natalie slumped in the driver's seat, vomiting uncontrollably all over herself and the doors. Natalie's eyes were wide open, and she was struggling to breathe. Realizing how serious the situation was, the practitioner tried to help, but it was clear that Natalie needed immediate medical attention. Concerned bystanders gathered, trying to figure out what was going on and how they could help. The practitioner called 911 to report the accident, and after a while, the police and paramedics arrived and rushed Natalie to St. Vincent Medical Center. While the paramedics were taking care of Natalie, the police stayed at the scene of the accident trying to figure out what had happened. They looked at the car to find clues because it didn't look like a normal car accident scene, and Natalie was in very bad shape. Natalie's car was going at a normal speed, and it didn't make sense that the car looked fine when Natalie was in such bad shape. When she got to the hospital, the doctor quickly saw that she wasn't breathing well and wasn't responding. He started treatment right away and put in an intubation tube to help her breathe. They also gave her multiple rounds of medicine to try to speed up her heart rate, or at least keep its rhythm stable. But Natalie's heart rate stayed irregular, which shocked the doctor because there were no signs of trauma or injuries on her body that could explain her critical condition. We have a female who's healthy who, when EMS gets to the scene, she's vomiting, she's unresponsive. Things, as an emergency physician, I would be thinking about. Did she have an aneurysm that ruptured in her brain and she has a large hemorrhage? Did she have a dissection of the aorta that damaged her vessels? Meanwhile, Ethan was called as soon as Natalie was taken to the emergency room. He was at home with the kids when he got the call from the hospital, so he quickly drove over to Natalie's house and asked them to watch the kids while he rushed to Natalie's side at the hospital. The doctors asked Ethan if Natalie had any medical history that could explain why she wasn't responding, but Ethan told them that Natalie was completely healthy. Tragically, after 40 to 45 minutes of intensive treatment, Natalie still wasn't responding, and an hour after arriving at the hospital, her condition didn't get better, and she was pronounced dead. But this small car accident was about to bring some hidden secrets to light. Jason, Natalie's brother and a lawyer by trade, made a number of difficult calls to tell everyone, including Natalie's best friend Sophie Allen. When Natalie was only 4, she met Sophie, who was 15 at the time and working as a babysitter at Natalie's house. When Sophie got the call and learned about Natalie's sudden death, she was shocked and upset, but was able to calm down and share a strange suspicion with Jason. "I have a weird thing that happened. Natalie was talking to me just before she died, and she was mentioning that Ethan gave her this pill, but she said it just made her feel terrible. So you need to look into that." She recounted her last conversation with Natalie, which had taken place just seconds before the accident. Sophie's recollection of their chat hinted at something unusual, deepening the mystery of Natalie's untimely death. On the morning of February 24th, just before leaving the house, Ethan had insisted that Natalie take some calcium pills, as he emphasized the importance of bone health for her as she was approaching the age of 38. However, shortly after taking the pills, Natalie began to feel ill. Sophie persuaded Jason to research this option since it would help him comprehend the circumstances surrounding Natalie's unexpected and inexplicable death. So, Dr. Balge did a complete autopsy and toxicology analysis on Natalie on February 25, 2005. Everyone hoped for answers, but to their dismay, the results were inconclusive. Despite thorough examination, no clues emerged to explain the cause of Natalie's death. A perfectly healthy 38-year-old mother of 2 died so suddenly in a minor car collision that it was hard for anyone to accept. Investigators felt they were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, but out of respect, they decided to give Ethan and his family some time to grieve. With no evidence of foul play, there was none. Natalie was not just a full-of-life person, but also very passionate and hardworking. Shortly after graduating, she began her career and secured a steady position at Mount Si Hospital. It was around this time that she met the young physician named Ethan Morgan. Ethan Morgan was the son of Palestinian immigrant parents who grew up in Detroit. His family owned a grocery store. It was there in 1995 that Natalie and Ethan fell in love and married. On September 11, 1999, their family quickly grew with the birth of their son Armin in 2000 and their daughter Lena in 2002. The loving couple even planned on having a 3rd child to add to their happy family. The family thought, well, this is great because, what a handsome guy. We all seem to like him. He's just so nice and warm and fuzzy, someone said. They embraced him, and they moved into a lovely neighborhood. You had a doctor, a beautiful wife, and 2 little kids. Not long after, a perfect couple, perfect family, perfect everything. As a result of the background check, the detectives did not find any suspicious information to look into. To find answers, they resumed their investigation. This investigation was going to bring new surprises and shocking twists to the case. They started by re-interviewing several witnesses and hospital staff in the hopes of finding something they might have missed the first time around. It was during these interviews that they noticed something odd about Ethan's reaction to the news of his wife's death. Instead of showing the expected grief, he acted strangely detached and didn't seem to care. His behavior was strange, the investigators said. They were interested in Ethan's strange behavior because they found out more disturbing information. Soon after the accident, Ethan sent a surprisingly calm text message to everyone saying, "I just wanted to let you know that Natalie died yesterday in a minor car accident. She will be missed." Given the situation, the casual tone of the message was shocking. What was even more strange was that Ethan didn't ask any questions about his wife's death. He just believed that the car accident was the cause without asking for more information. 2 weeks after Natalie's untimely death, the police chose to contact Ethan. They wanted to talk to him, not because they thought there was foul play, but to find out more about his version of what happened on the day of the accident. They called Ethan and politely asked if he could come down to the police station to give a voluntary statement. The detectives reassured him that it was a normal process that would only help them figure out what had happened. Their only goal was to learn more about what had happened and see if Ethan's story would lead them to any new information. She wanted to go see a movie with her sister. She was running a little late and left around 1. They asked if she was taking any over-the-counter meds or vitamins or supplements. She was taking a vitamin occasionally, told calcium, and then right before she left, took the calcium, just calcium. I can't see how that would relate. When did he start taking the vitamins or native vitamins? Are they thinking any of this had to do with anything? I don't know. I mean, at this point, you have somebody who's 38 years old. Suddenly she dies and nobody can help her. It's kind of like what happened. I think I have most of what I need at this point. Are the calcium pills still home? Would you mind if I followed you back to your home and collected those? No, that'd be great. Not at all. Ethan didn't say anything when the inspectors went back to his house to get the vitamins and calcium supplements. When they got there, they were surprised to see a woman sitting in the kitchen. She said her name was Clara Diaz. Ethan had hired a daily nanny to watch the kids while he was at work. What came as even more of a surprise was the news that Ethan had also hired a nighttime nanny, Grace Collins. Some people were confused by these details, but the detectives were focused on their main goal, which was to get the calcium tablets as possible evidence without making too much of a fuss. The detectives quickly gathered the supplements and sent them to be tested because they thought someone might have tampered with the pills, possibly to hurt Natalie. I took in the evidence, which was submitted to our laboratory, which was a plastic bottle filled with pills that were purported to be calcium pills. My job at this point isn't to prove that there was poison. My job at this point is to prove that these capsules are all calcium. They found a bunch of calcium. However, they also found 9 of these pills have been tampered with. At first look, the calcium pills that were taken from Ethan's house seemed normal, but things weren't what they seemed to be as they were about to reveal the most shocking twist that no one saw coming. This finding made the detectives suspicious, so they sent the pills to a lab for a full analysis. To their surprise, the results showed something no one had expected. The 9 pills contained cyanide. Cyanide is a poison that can kill, but it is not usually checked for in regular toxicology checks. To find cyanide, a careful and specific study is needed. It's not something that would normally show up unless someone is specifically looking for it. Even the discovery of cyanide in Natalie's case was a very rare and horrifying event that most forensic scientists never see in their entire lives. With this shocking discovery, the investigation quickly turned into a full-on murder investigation. The detectives quickly got a search warrant for Natalie's car and carefully collected samples from her vomit and seat covers in the hopes of finding more clues. As expected, cyanide was found in Natalie's vomit. During the search to learn more about the case, the coroner ordered a new toxicology screening for Natalie. When the results came back, they shocked everyone. The analysis found a shocking 9.1 milligrams of cyanide per liter of her blood, which is 3 times higher than what is usually considered fatal. It was even scarier when they found out that the calcium pills she had been taking were tainted with 600 to 800 milligrams of pure cyanide. This dose was more than enough to kill her. So, it was clear to the investigators that Natalie's death was not an accident, but a planned and malicious act. The police quickly came up with the idea that Ethan wanted to take the highway to the movies. If the cyanide had taken effect while she was driving at 60 miles per hour, a high-speed crash would have been inevitable, and the coroner would have given that as the cause of her death. However, Natalie's decision to take a back road that day and travel at a much slower speed helped them figure out the real cause of her death. With this idea in mind, the police were ready to arrest Ethan for killing Natalie. But Ethan was already 1 step ahead of them. Just as they were about to arrest him, they got the shocking news that he had disappeared. Once Ethan had turned over the calcium tablets, and it would be highly likely, once they were tested, that the cyanide would be found. At that point in time, the focus would come down on Dr. Morgan. What he chose to do was run. The next day, March 18, 2005, investigators took the calcium pills from Ethan's house. Ethan asked Natalie's sister to watch the kids overnight, and she agreed without being suspicious. However, early the next morning, March 19th, at 4 a.m., she got a voicemail from Ethan. In a calm voice, he said that his friend's brother had been in a terrible car accident in North Carolina and might not survive. He said that he was going to help him, but she didn't know that this was the start of Ethan's sudden disappearance. Ethan asked Natalie's family to watch his kids over the weekend and said he'd be back on Monday. But when Monday came and went without Ethan or even a call, Natalie's family got very worried and decided to call Ethan's friend to see if he knew what was going on. Maybe Ethan had to stay longer because of an emergency. But his friend's response shocked everyone. He said Ethan had never been to North Carolina, and there had been no car accident involving his brother. This news shocked Natalie's family, who wondered where Ethan could be and why he had lied. As they grew more worried and realized something was very wrong, they reported Ethan missing. Days went by without hearing from him, and the situation became more mysterious. Why would he just leave like this, especially since the murder of his wife was still being investigated? What could have been more important to him than this? Even though everyone was worried, Jason, Natalie's brother, wasn't sure that Ethan was just lost. He had strong doubts and thought there might be more to it than that. A bad guy set on discovering the truth. After rushing over to Ethan's house, Jason started looking for clues. While he was looking through the kitchen, he saw a recently opened passport-style package on the counter. Jason's heart sank when he realized that Ethan had not only gone missing, but also run away. He immediately told the police that he had found the passport envelope and asked them to question Ethan's brother and business partner, Fuss Morgan, who was the only family member he was close to. The police also moved quickly and called Fuss to get more information. It didn't take him long to tell the police the whole truth. Ethan had actually asked his brother to help him leave the United States. He told Fuss that he had to leave town because he was afraid that people would find out about his sexual affairs. Interestingly, the two women Ethan was seeing were the same women he hired as his children's daytime and nighttime nannies. Ethan had also told Fuss that he was unhappy in his marriage and wanted to leave Natalie. This made investigators suspicious, but the real reason for the murder was much more disturbing. Could Ethan have killed his wife because he didn't want to pay the money for a divorce and instead wanted to be with the nannies? To get Ethan out of the country, Fuss asked a cousin who had experience smuggling people across borders to help them. This was a quick but dangerous way for Ethan to get away from his terrible situation. The police knew they had to bring Ethan back in order to get some clear answers. He went up to Detroit, crossed the bridge to Windsor, from Windsor to Toronto, from Toronto to Cyprus, from Cyprus to Beirut. And why Beirut? Well, of course, he's Lebanese, but Beirut does not have...
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Have an extradition treaty with the United States. So there he sat because he had a buddy over in Lebanon who had connections, papers, safe houses, and a place for him to just, if you're going to be on the lam, that was the perfect place to be. On April 22nd, 2005, the county coroner said that Natalie Morgan, who was 38 years old, had died from acute cyanide poisoning. This led a grand jury to indict Ethan on charges of aggravated murder. However, there was a big problem. Ethan had already fled to Lebanon, which does not have an extradition treaty with the United States. This made it very hard to bring Ethan to justice because the legal systems of the two countries did not make it easy to transfer fugitives. He made a new life for himself literally in Beirut, Lebanon, which did not have an extradition policy with the United States at the time. He left behind his children. I think he probably knew that the Morgan family would step up and care for them as they have, someone said. It was bizarre, though, the fact that he thought it out and was able to do what he did so efficiently and so calculated, in such a calculated manner. Ethan carefully planned his escape. He went to Lebanon to start a new life, and a friend helped him make important links, get new ideas, and find a safe place to stay. Back in the U.S., investigators and the FBI took a long time to put everything together. By the time they realized Ethan had run away, 3 months had already passed. This gave Ethan plenty of time to settle down and disappear into his new life. The authorities couldn't bring him back. All they could do was issue plea deals in the hopes that Ethan would return voluntarily to answer for the murder of his wife, Natalie. But Ethan had other plans. When he got to Lebanon, he changed his name to Maurice Kiff and disappeared. In just 3 months, he also started dating Mila Suki, a 38-year-old school teacher, and drastically changed his appearance. He started wearing glasses and went for a sharp, sophisticated look to avoid being caught. Surprisingly, Ethan didn't try to hide his crime from anyone. He seemed to enjoy his new life, sure that he had gotten away with it. While the FBI and investigators in the U.S. were pleading for his return, Ethan was doing well in Lebanon, enjoying his newfound freedom and the comfort of his carefully constructed new identity. He was living the playboy life, just having a great old time. So much so that the guy who was his patron in Lebanon said, "I need you to be quiet. I need you to shut the hell up about being so bold about everything." Because he would apparently get, happy in the nightclub and say, they say I'm a killer. Huh, I could be a killer. After starting dating again, Ethan made a new email address called fugitive@hotmail.com and used it a lot. Meanwhile, back in Portland, the FBI and local police were carefully watching his every move, waiting for the perfect chance to catch him if he ever left Lebanon. Luckily, that chance came sooner than expected. On October 7th, 2006, Ethan got on a plane to Cyprus, setting off a chain of events that the authorities had been eagerly anticipating for months. The FBI immediately called the Cypriot authorities, warning them that Ethan was likely traveling with a fake passport. In response, the Cypriot authorities agreed to detain him because of this. When Ethan arrived at the Cyprus airport, he looked completely different. Based on a tip from the FBI, the Cypriot police asked for his fingerprints to make sure he was who he said he was, even though he had a fake passport. The fingerprints quickly showed that he was actually Dr. Ethan Morgan, giving the police every reason to arrest him. But things weren't as simple as they seemed. At the time that Dr. Morgan was charged with aggravated murder, and although there were no specifications or requests that this be handled as a possible death penalty case, persons could construe that aggravated murder would carry the death sentence. So that was something that had to be navigated through. The U.S. State Department worked with the folks in Cyprus to make sure they understood that the U.S. would not be looking for the death sentence, because Cyprus would have been reluctant to allow him to return for a trial where capital murder was involved. Even though Cyprus had an extradition agreement with the U.S., it didn't apply to cases involving the death penalty. Ethan's lawyers fought his extradition for almost 3 years, even though Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Bill Mason said that the death sentence wouldn't be sought. Finally, in January 2009, Ethan was sent back to Portland to stand trial for aggravated murder. The next step was to put together a prosecution team that had little more than hints of what they were doing: poison pills, a suspect who had left the country, and an email address that pointed to Ethan as a suspect. But proving all of this in court was going to be hard. The trial started on January 9th, 2010, in a courtroom in Portland. From the start, Ethan's defense said there was no strong testimony, relying heavily on the claim that the evidence was only suggestive and not direct proof. In spite of this, the prosecutors tried to make a strong case to get Natalie justice. The state's case here is entirely circumstantial in nature, one prosecutor said. Or to put another way, there is no hard evidence, no physical evidence, no scientific evidence whatsoever to connect Ethan Morgan. While Ethan was on trial, his defense team said that someone else had added cyanide to the pills with the intent to kill Natalie, and that Ethan was unaware of what they were doing. The prosecution, on the other hand, called 80 witnesses to counter this claim. Ethan's brother Fuss gave the most convincing testimony against him. This evidence was very bad for Ethan's defense because it made him look less trustworthy and suggested he had something to do with Natalie's death. When did he tell you that he gave the pill to his wife that killed her? Sometime after she passed away. So sometime within those 2 or 3 days. Those days kind of blur together for me because it was a pretty bad period. I mean, we just lost somebody we love. And when you had that conversation with him about that, did you ask him, well, who possibly could have put cyanide into those pills? Yes. And did you ask him if he killed his wife? Yes. I asked him if he was responsible for her death, and he said yes. What did he tell you that he did? He said that he put the cyanide in the capsules. The defense also brought up the idea that one of Ethan's mistresses, who was upset about his happy marriage, might have poisoned Natalie on her own. However, they were unable to back up this theory with solid proof. On the other hand, the prosecution presented strong evidence linking Ethan to Natalie's murder, pointing out that he had even bragged about it while he was in Lebanon. Plan A is a high-speed automobile accident. Plan B is random product tampering. Plan C is girlfriend killed my wife so she could be with me. That's the presentation you're going to get in this case. The jury came to a decision on March 9, 2010, after days of strong testimony and heated arguments. We, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled and sworn, do find the defendant, Ethan Morgan, guilty of aggravated murder. Finally, Ethan was found guilty of aggravated murder and given a sentence of life in jail without the chance of parole for 20 years. Parents of Natalie were so happy and sad at the same time that they hugged each other tightly. Not only had their daughter's killer finally been caught, but they also couldn't help but think about how Natalie had been planning for a third child, but now had to leave her 2 children to grow up without their parents. Before we end the video, we want to send our deepest condolences to Natalie Morgan and her family. What do you think about this case? Is it true that Ethan killed Natalie just to live with his women? Or is there more to the story than meets the eye? Thanks for joining me today as we explored this gripping true crime case. If you found this story as intriguing as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth investigations. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about the evidence? Were there any details that surprised you? Until next time, stay safe and keep questioning the world around you. See you in the next video.